One, two, three.
It's amazing, how your business runs on traffic.
Yeah. There's 2 lakh people who are going to leave BKC in 3 hours.
I want to see flying cars. A very warm welcome to the Leaders of Tomorrow Vodcast, your go-to series for unfiltered conversations with entrepreneurs who are shaping the future of business. I'm Ritwika Gupta, and today we are talking about something every city dweller relates to, the daily commute. Long hours, traffic, chaos, we've all been there. But one startup decided to make city travel actually smooth, and that is CityFlow, a brand reimagining how urban India moves. Joining me today are Jerin, Venad, co-founder and CEO, and Rushabh, Shah, co-founder and CBO of Cityflow, to talk about how they are flipping the script on the everyday bus ride. Jerin, Rushabh, welcome to the Leaders of Tomorrow podcast. It's a pleasure to be chatting with you today.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
So honestly, I want to start from the very beginning. Okay, first of all, Cityflow has about, 4 founders, right?
Yes.
And you guys are representing the team today, so thank you so much. Glad that you could, make time and speak to us today. But I want to know, how did you guys all meet? Was it at IIT Bombay?
Yeah, we went to college together in IIT Bombay from 2009 to 2014. We were actually 4 of us are from the same hostel. So we spent a bunch of time before we got out into the real world, and we'd keep meeting, once in a while. And one of the things we realized was the common shared pain of commute in every major Indian city. And I think when we started, it was actually, I think our thoughts of what we wanted to build and how it came about, came in, matured over time. But we came together to solve the pain of commute. And I think that remains our directional goal even today.
I think the initial idea was just like, kuch karte hain. And
Right.
it was, by then, the cab aggregators had come up, right? And people had shown, we started in 2015, by the way, which is like 10 years ago. And by then it was proven that mobile-based, services would work. So cabs had happened, food ordering had sort of happened. But we just felt that for India specifically and for our metros where the density is so high, a better solution actually might be in the shared mobility sort of space. So the idea was that can we, bring people together on high density routes and can we provide them affordable, comfortable commute?
Right.
So our experience was, like, for example, I stay in Dadar. My office, I was in consulting at that time and my office was in Nariman Point. And as a first year sort of associate, I had 2 options, right? I could take the train, but that was affordable. Or I could, take a cab, which was a lot more expensive. So we said that can we bridge this sort of massive gap by providing comfortable yet affordable commute, which was, at that time, our thesis was a short seat on an AC bus, where the cost is effectively getting divided between multiple people. And we started, and initially our thought was that we'll move people away from public transport. But we realized actually the person who's driving is in as much pain and he's spending a lot more money, but he's still having a hard time navigating through traffic. So then over the years, it sort of moved more to targeted towards actually moving away people from cars and cabs, because that also then helps decongest the city.
Yeah.
And then that has net benefit for everyone, not just the people using Cityflow, but everyone sort of using the road. So that's how the idea sort of evolved.
So Cityflow started in 2015. We are in 2025.
Yes.
Tell me, over the last 10 years, how have you seen the mobility market, evolve over the years? Where are the biggest reforms that are still required? And where do you see the biggest opportunities?
Yeah, I think, we've seen it, evolve as we've operated. I think what's recognized now a lot more than back in 2015 is a need for Indian solutions for Indian cities. We operate in a very different context. What we call a big city in India is at least 5 times what the West calls a big city, right? So the solution that works in the West is not going to work here. The biggest difference we see is an acceptance for that reality. And this needs all the stakeholders coming together. And from the very top, we see the government making push towards a significant number of electric buses getting deployed. I think that's number one. There's huge deployment of metros that's happening across our cities. I think we're finally, on the other side, on almost on the other side of a very painful decade of metros getting built in our already congested cities. I think these two are the starting points. What we've realized is, mobility in a city exists at different price points, different distances for different people. So it is going to be a combination of probably 7 to 10 different micro solutions together with public transit that's going to solve the problem. And today we see a lot of interesting solutions coming up, even on the cab aggregator space with newer companies, the government trying to bring in digital alternatives to the cab aggregators, bus aggregators like us. We have bike taxis and other modes which don't exist in the West, right? So I think it is evolving into a more Indian solution. But I think the best, time where we see this problem getting solved is going to happen in the next decade.
Right.
So we are seeing people address it in a more fundamental manner. And that's going to happen over the next decade.
So say if you were starting off CityFlow today in 2025, what would you do differently?
Lots of things. So we keep saying this, right? That so we started CityFlow when we were 23, 1 or 2 years out of college. And it's been 10 years and CityFlow's seen different, the one thing I say is that, I'm like a third time founder because CityFlow's had 3 different versions that we've built, right? So initially we had a hypothesis which was moving people away from public transportation. And then we realized the unit economics are very difficult. So we sort of pivoted to a more premium space, and then COVID happened and everyone in the transport and mobility space was overnight had to go down to zero. And then post 22 is when you see this sort of final version that we're building right now. So obviously we've learned a lot, over the years. I think something that has stayed constant and something that would stay constant even if we choose to build CityFlow today is customer focus. That identify the problem statement, identify that one sort of what is the pain point that we're going after, right? What is the pain point that the customer has that you want to solve and that you are uniquely positioned to solve and build. And keep focusing on that and keep driving that forward. And for us, it is still that, we want to solve home to office commute primarily because that is what bulk of the sort of mobility in a city is about, right? This is the most sort of frequent use case that people are doing. And that's the most important sort of use case as well because it's directly related to their ability to earn. And so keeping that in mind and keeping the customer focus in mind, that, keeping ourselves always with our ears to the ground as to what the customer feedback is and how we can keep doing better. I think those things would stay the same when we were to start again today.
So just coming back to, because you mentioned customer focused, right? I want to understand, how do you see the Indian consumer, the passenger, how do they view their commute? Are they open to taking public transportation, or are they still, those who have a car will take their car eventually? Is that the mentality? What's your take on that?
Firstly, I think every city is different. For example, Mumbai, the public transportation is used by across all economic strata, right? It's even if you have your own car, people in Mumbai value time, and a lot of times public transport is faster, be it the train or the new metros, and they will go regardless of what economic background they come from.
Sure. Take us through some of the challenges in your earlier days. How did you know that this is something that is going to set you apart from everything that's available in the market?
I think just going back to what you said, right? What you asked in the last question. Would a car owner be in a bus, right? And it's something, if you told us 10 years back, that's actually not what we were building for, right? If I were to be 100% honest, that's something our customers taught us, right? Because in our first phase where we thought of it as more of a low-cost solution, which was maybe just an improvement over public transport, right? Like I said, an assured seat in an air-conditioned bus. That's what we were trying to build, right? Of course, and it has its fundamental challenges because public transport operates in a very different realm, right? And over time, we realized, and we would have this thing, what we called a program within CityFlow called one ride a month.
Okay.
Right? So each of us, everyone in the team would take one ride in a CityFlow per month. And through these, we over months realized that there was a consistent theme where we would keep hearing, I've stopped using my car after 7 years in the city. Right? I've, dropped my driver behind and, now I'm in a CityFlow.
So that you heard the passengers talking,
And
wow.
This is not what we expected, right? So over time we were like, this is not what we thought we were building, but this was what the customers taught us. They said, it takes as much time to drive. And I'm excited, and the car ownership discussion came into the picture, right? I think we're in a generation where car ownership doesn't mean what it did mean 10, 15 years back.
Right.
So over time, I think people have gotten used to the cabs and the aggregators, and cars not as big a part of lifestyle. Maybe, it's moved on to other things. But while that has happened, people have said, if it's an air-conditioned bus, it's a point-to-point service, and I have full flexibility, I'll just take CityFlow. I free 2 hours in a day for myself, right? I'm not stuck at the wheel, right? So with that, we realized about 70% of the people who use CityFlow were actually car owners, right? And that changed our perspective of what we needed to build, right? And going back to how did you carve out a niche, is we said, for the first time, a car owner is sitting in a bus ride. You just have to think that and design a bus ride, in line with that. And we've broken some of the thumb rules, while the fundamentals remain the same, right? It's a good bus, it's a clean bus, and it runs on time. All the softer aspects had to be in tune for the car owner.
Absolutely. Were there certain factors or certain things that surprised you about the market when you first, probably started out?
So I know one thing we realized is that CityFlow had about, still does in fact, now it's more, two things actually that surprised us. One was 40% of our users are women. And if you look at the average sort of workforce in India, it's about half that in the corporate sort of space, which was surprising for us. And when we sort of double clicked on that, we realized that, and this I learned actually from my wife, where she said, I never fall asleep in a cab when I'm alone. But she said, I can fall asleep in a CityFlow because there are a lot of people around me. And there's usually women around me. Like you can choose to sit next to, other females. And she knows that, we have a feature where the phone will buzz when your drop stop is coming. And she said, between these 2-3 things, it's actually much safer for me than sort of taking a cab by myself. And that was surprising because honestly, as male engineers, we never thought about this aspect of it. The other thing that was again surprising from a customer usage point of view is about 35% of our users are iPhone owners, which is again tying back to Jerin's point about that we were actually building for the car owners, for the crowd that would actually occupy maximum road space. And, I keep telling my friends, you complain about traffic, but you are the traffic. You are the traffic. It's not an external thing that's happening to you. And that was again surprising for us.
How many CityFlow buses are there, altogether, roughly?
Today we operate about 600 buses across 3 cities. So we operate in Mumbai, which is still about 75% of our business. Then we have Hyderabad, and we've launched this year in Delhi.
Fantastic. So you guys have an excellent idea, on paper. Now the second step is to actually scale the idea, right? So I know when it comes to, getting funding, startups approach them differently. Either they can go bootstrapped initially, then they can approach a VC, or they can apply for a grant or take the bank loan route as well. What was your approach like and why?
I think our business is capital intensive, right? So we were very fortunate to get the first round of funding very early. However, I think before that we did have a fairly, now in hindsight, aggressive investment of all our savings into the business. But we're fortunate, that we got investment soon, because we wouldn't have been able to sustain the business on just personal money. And we believe on the larger, I think it depends a lot on the business you run. And how much capital is required. So if a solution in mobility where there are assets to be deployed, I think you do need capital. And the way I see it is, I think the last 10 years or the last 5 years especially in India is a place where private equity, now equity capital is available, in abundance, right? And it helps you aspire for goals which otherwise you couldn't have done, right? Otherwise, for us to build out, a fleet of 600 buses would probably have taken, twice or thrice as much time as we've done. So while I leave it to, every business having its own requirements, but I believe private equity is something people should use. And it will definitely, as we can see, is spurring like a whole movement of a bunch of startups coming in. So I think it's a very, very positive movement for India.
Same question to you, Rishabh, and also, just by way of advice to entrepreneurs, in terms of, when they are starting out, they are confused to know what they should do. Of course, if they have the money, then go bootstrap maybe for some time. I don't know. So what is your advice to them on that?
I think I want to add one thing to what Jerin said. Firstly is regardless of what your source of funding is, whether it's, grants, venture capital, private equity or bootstrap, it doesn't take away from the fact that you need a viable, sustainable business.
True.
So what the source of funding is important for is how quickly do you want to grow, and is it's nature of businesses that some businesses need capital to be invested upfront and then it sort of grows. Some businesses don't have that nature, which can be bootstrapped more easily, or are also more recognized and you can fund it through debt. For example, like if you want to set up a factory, banks would fund the equipment through a debt and you can fund that. But it's about the way, the way I describe it is you're building a rocket, and it's if you want it to accelerate, then you need fuel, and then if you provide that fuel, or if you can't, then you look for external sources of funding. And nothing is free, it's a trade-off. So if you bootstrap it, you own and control 100% of your company.
Yeah.
If you raise funding, then you move, you are relinquishing ownership of the business. Like Jerin and I think of us, all the founders, in fact, we think of ourselves as custodians of our shareholders, because we have shareholders, and while we are shareholders as well, it's important for us to generate value for everyone. So CityFlow is not it's not just my company, it's a company owned by multiple people, including our investors, including our employees. So I think there's no right answer. You can find what works for you. It's important to understand what the trade-offs are, understand what you're getting into, and then make an informed decision. I think India is a culture, we celebrate funding announcements, right? Like I've seen, we're part of entrepreneur groups, and we see, when someone's funding gets announced, we see congratulatory messages, right? Which is great. It's validation of the hard work that a founder puts in. And the nature of being an entrepreneur, one advice I have for new entrepreneurs is the nature of the business such that you'll hear no's more often than you'll hear a yes. Because it takes 99 no's, but it takes only one yes. The moment you hear a yes, you don't have to listen to any more no's. So it's by nature, you're always going to listen to a lot more rejection, and having, closing funding, getting funding is validation of your idea. But it's actually day one. It's like, taking the rocket example again, you're building a rocket and someone has given you budget approval. But so you don't celebrate that. You actually have to go ahead and then launch it and then have it successful. So I think that's important to keep in mind. I think that's something we've learned over the years, that it is something we're doing, it is something that we're building. And getting funded is just confidence, someone else showing confidence in your idea, but you still have to go ahead and execute it.
So what makes you think, like, what according to you, made your pitch stand out? How was that experience like for you, when you got your Series A funding?
Two things, I think. One is that the problem that we're trying to address is very real. Everyone knows about it. Commute, for example, is something everyone has an opinion about, right? It's one of the most sort of often discussed topics in office, that, today there was traffic here, or today I got late for so-and-so reason. So the problem was well recognized. It was clearly identified that there is a problem.
Okay.
And the second thing is the solution, of course, what we were proposing was something that people recognize could be a solution. But what I think matters more than that is it is something that we are passionate about. It is something that we have been doing, we want to do, and we feel strongly for. And very often, investors will back the founders, and that becomes the sort of first thing that they look at. So I think it was a combination of these two things, that we had a real problem that we were chasing, and it seemed like we would be, the right people to solve it.
Right. Jerin, you spoke about expansion. You have expanded to Hyderabad and Delhi. So are you looking at other markets as well? And how different are these markets when it comes to what is the strategy that you have to keep in mind when you're expanding?
Yeah, so for when we think about expansion, we go into a new city, and there are certain flavors to each city, right? There are certain, which are the commercial concentrations, which are the residential hubs. But fundamentally, what we have understood over time is that every city has a bunch of similar traits.
Right.
How CityFlow operates is connecting heavy density routes, ferrying along heavy density route which connect a residential hub to a commercial hub. This is how every single city grows, right? So we have realized that the CityFlow, the product probably applies to about the top 12 cities in India where the population is above 80 lakhs. Right. So that's where commuting becomes painful, journeys start taking more than an hour, and that's where CityFlow comes in.
Right.
Beyond this, we've realized there's, of course, while this is the model in which CityFlow operates, there are certain local flavors, or local anecdotal knowledge that you need to build, right? That's where we have a small and, effective local team that, executes the operations for us in every city. So that's how we go about it.
Tell me, how is technology, especially AI, how do you think that is going to impact the mobility market? And also in terms of, for entrepreneurs, should they look at AI as, to be sort of navigate carefully around, or should they, embrace it with open arms? How should they, view AI according to you?
Look, I think at the end of the day, it's a technology, and you leverage the technology to the best for your business. So, like, for example, when we were growing up, Google search had just come in, right? There was before that you had to, you have to go to the library, for example, to look something up, or you had the phone directory. And then the 99 2000.com sort of bubble, and then progressively everything changed because technology made things easier. And I think about AI in a similar way, that I think it's important not to have a hammer looking for a nail. So it's not about, okay, where can we put this? But it is definitely going to have, accelerated impact across businesses. And I think you have to embrace it, because if you don't, then someone else will. And if it's survival of the fittest, right? So in terms of, whether it's mobility or any industry, it is about thinking about understanding what AI is and how can you best apply it to your context. How can you help it for your team members to be more productive, for example, so that same team can sort of take 10x the scale that they're currently taking on. Can it shorten certain timelines? Can you do things faster? Or does it help you, do things better? I'll give you an example of how we use it.
Yeah.
CityFlow does mass driver recruitment. Okay. Earlier, we would have some person who would call the driver and ask them if they were interested, explain the job to them and try to recruit them. And the connectivity percentages are like 20%. So out of 100 calls you make, only 20 would pick up. And then you would generate interest about maybe 10 of them and eventually hire 2. So we had 100 to 2 conversion. Now with, AI-based calls, you can feed in the list and you can trigger that initial call by AI, which would have a script and would have a default path to follow. Which means that the first, going from 100 to 20, which is all the calls that didn't connect, can be generated by AI. And AI can do that first 20 to 10 as well, where the call is connected, and AI can just ask, are you interested? So instead of calling 100 people, the team is now calling just 10 people. So their throughput and their conversion has gone, very high, and we're able to now we know that, okay, if we wanted to launch a route with, say, 20 buses, we would need some amount of time to have the drivers ready for it. That timeline has been crunched. So it's about understanding how best to use it and use it to the best for your business, basically.
Sure. Jerin, coming to you now, you spoke about, right now, electric vehicles is like a hot topic, and I know CityFlow is doing a lot, on that front. Talk to us a little bit about that, and also in terms of, largely what sustainability means to you as a company.
I'll address the electric vehicles part first. So this year, we've, while we continue to operate our premium bus business, we've also entered into the public transportation opportunity, right? So the government has decided now that all our state transport undertakings, right, which would include our BST, MSRTC, and across the country, like there's be DTC, BMTC, all of these, the operations are going to get privatized. And there's going to be a large deployment of electric buses. All of this is going to, move to electric.
Yeah.
And the plan is to roll out 1 lakh electric buses, which is the largest deployment of electric buses globally. And I think, and the project is underway. I think we've probably deployed the first 5,000, 7,000 of them. And I think the next 5 years is going to be very busy on that front, right? With manufacturers, financiers, operators, everything. And we've jumped into this opportunity, because fundamentally what we've built as a skill set in our operations, being, very nimble on operations, being tech enabled, making smart choices, using AI on how to deploy and how to minimize cost doing this. The same, philosophy or the same principles apply to public transport operations, right? So, and that segment is completely electric, right? Where all deployment of ICE buses, which whether it be diesel or CNG, are now a thing of the past. And the government's decided it's going to be 100% electric. Now, this is one big piece, but the other kind of operations, right, where, the operations in public transport probably closer to 200 kilometers a day. The other operations, which will be school, staff, CityFlow operations, would be closer to 100 kilometers a day. I think we are about 6 to 12 months away from large-scale EV adoption there. In fact, we are right now in the middle of, planning the first 30 buses to be deployed in our Mumbai fleet, which would be 100% electric. So I think we're at that cusp. There's, of course, the prices have started making sense now. I think it's feasible and it's cheaper than diesel to do. But there's obviously certain operational, nuances. Operating an electric bus is very different from operating, an ICE engine bus. So I think we'll go through that. It's a very exciting year for us.
Right. Now, having a great team is also key to building a successful business. And there are four co-founders. Do you guys ever fight? And who makes who makes peace among all of you?
Yeah. We fight.
Do you have
we fight. Yeah, we are so as a value, it's strong opinions held loosely. So we all have strong opinions, but at the end of the day, I mean, we've been together for 15 years now, 5 years in college, then running CityFlow. I think it's always important to remember that we all have CityFlow's best interest at heart, and it's about differing viewpoints, and it's about every differing perspective adds value to you. So we have I would say we don't fight, but we debate, and the debate is done keeping the objective in mind and with the common goal of reaching the best possible solution to that objective. And I think that's important. And the other value that I think I love going to work. I love, everyone knows that I love going to office. I love working. I work with, my friends, and we're solving a passionate problem, a real problem that we're all passionate about. But I think the most important thing is mutual respect. Like, we all recognize each other's strengths, our own weaknesses, and how we all complement each other on it. And there is mutual respect, and we know, there are certain areas of expertise that each one of us has, and we all recognize and value that.
Fantastic. So going forward, tell me, what is the plan for CityFlow, in the years to come? You have, of course, told me about, what you're doing on the electric side, EV side, but how do you see the company shaping up, perhaps in the next 5 to 10 years, in the next decade or so? Jerin, let's hear it from you first.
Yeah, I think when we started as someone not from the industry, right? We started with a very first principle. This is the problem that commuters are facing. Let's figure out what the solution is. And it happened to be a bus, right? And we went on building it, and we're here today. But today we actually look at it from a much broader perspective of, we have the perspective of mobility today, right? So we see the space that CityFlow's product occupies, and our primary focus is going to be expanding that, Like we're probably, looking at a 10-fold expansion over the next 5 years.
And are you also planning to expand in the product category from
Absolutely.
buses to something else?
Correct. So that is the second part where we said now we see the urban mobility problem as a whole problem with a bunch of solutions. Our guiding principle is, if we build this solution, is there something unique about it? And is there a unique value that we bring? Is there an unfair advantage that CityFlow can have building this solution, where we earn the right to win in that market, right? So that becomes a guiding principle for us. So with this, earlier this year, we've expanded into the corporate business where, we are able to utilize our buses, that's the same fleet, a lot more than a traditional bus operator would. We've entered into a long-term arrangement, entered in the advertisement business with, in a partnership with Signpost India. We've entered the public transportation market through a software and, consulting play. And I think we have a bunch of other things in the wraps as well, which we are quite excited for.
Fantastic. Rishabh?
Yeah, I think, like Jerin said, I think we're not married to the solution, we're married to the problem. And where...
Jab tak problem rahega, there will be CityFlow.
Yeah. So we get asked this, there's a common question I get is, Mumbai is building so much metro. Once all the metro comes, won't it impact your business? And my response is, once all the metro comes, do you think the traffic on the road will disappear? And they're like, no, there's more. I'm like, jab tak traffic hai, tab tak CityFlow hai. If there's no traffic, then it's great. Then maybe, CityFlow is not a solution that we need. But it's about recognizing, like Jerin said, it's about recognizing the challenges with urban mobility and building the best solution to them. So in terms of the product categories, if I can, speak briefly, is CityFlow, all of CityFlow's users use CityFlow for commute, right? Home to office and back. And some of them have ditched their cars, don't have drivers anymore. So they, we realized when we were talking to them that they said, hey, actually, when I want to go to the airport or when I have personal travel, there's no service because CityFlow may not serve that route, for example. So we launched something called CityFlow Lux, which is premium cabs, electric as well as diesel or petrol. Like we have BYDs and we have Innovas, which are for the use case where, like when you're going for the one-off travel, which is not your commute, which is where you want, like either you can rent it for a few hours or you can go to the airport or you can take it out station. And the promise stays the same. We want to give you comfortable, a great service. So where now CityFlow can look at your end-to-end mobility needs. And then we're also evolving as the city is evolving. So for example, the new Aqua line has just gone live. CityFlow is the official feeder partner for the Aqua line. So we run the last mile in the business hubs, connecting the metro station to all the offices. And we use our data and our sort of route design to enable the metro as well. And that is a partnership we're very excited about. And as more and more metros come up, that is something that we see will scale. So across sort of geographies, that is one expansion. We expect a couple more cities to go live soon. And across the use that people have for mobility. And that is how we see the next sort of 5 years, 10 years evolving as well.
Right. And finally, as we're wrapping up this, wonderful conversation, on the show, we always talk about the 20-80 rule, the 80-20 rule, whereby 20% of what you do impacts 80% of your success of the business. What do you think was that 20% for you? Rishabh, maybe let's start with you this time.
So I think the 20% for me was that I realized the most impact I can have is giving ownership to my team. And my role as a founder is basically to spend maximum amount of time just enabling the team to do what they need to do and help them with that. And that has the sort of maximum impact that we can have.
Jerin?
For me, I think it's a collective thing that we've shown. I think it's the persistence that we have had, given the pandemic and challenges in between.
Yeah.
And given this sector we operate in, I think keeping your sight on the problem and a potential solution that you see, but the rest of the world doesn't always see. I think it's what has helped us get over the challenges that we've faced and stick to the job.
Fantastic. Well, more power to the both of you. Thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking to us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Before we wrap up today's episode, here's a quick look at our LOT cheat sheet, a quick rundown of the top takeaways from today's episode. And that's a wrap on today's episode of Leaders of Tomorrow Vodcast. Stay tuned for more inspiring conversations and keep chasing those big dreams. Until next time, this is Ritwika Gupta signing off.